and welcome to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about the 3 inside secrets to selling your business for millions. My name is Kimberly Deese, and I'm a board-certified intermediary with Murphy Business and Financial Services. What we're going to be reviewing today is we're going to be looking at several things. We're looking at how buyers value a business. We're going to be looking at how to leverage time to drastically increase the value of a business. We're going to touch on the dirty dozen and the things that can be hidden in a business that might interfere with the value. We're also going to share tons of stories today. Of course, I'm not going to name any companies or call anybody out, but I'm going to share with you some specific stories to help you understand what could happen if some of these things are not implemented and what does happen when they are implemented. We're also going to talk about the 7 reasons why people sell a business and what it means to you, as well as learning how one business owner who didn't do this literally lost millions. So let's get started today. We have a lot of content to cover. We're going to be about a 30-minute webinar, and so let's go ahead and get started. Our first secret to selling your business for millions is that you have to understand how businesses are valued. And the truth is that buyers often value businesses very differently than the way sellers value businesses. See, the way a seller often values a business is they look at it from the perspective of what did they put into it. All the hard work, all the sacrifice. They look at how many hours they spent at their desk. They look at how many late nights, how many weekends. They look at how long the business has been in existence, sometimes 20, 30, 40 years of existence. The great reputation, everybody knows our brand. Large customer base is often how an owner will look at the value of their business. Sacrifices, how many baseball games they missed, how many school plays they missed, how many times they couldn't be there for their kids, their family, their spouses. They also will look at it, this is common in franchises. They will look at their investment. So for example, a startup franchise might cost $475,000. But when they went to sell it, it was ended up only worth, $675,000. But when they went to sell it, it was actually only worth $475,000 because buyers and sellers value businesses differently. Now, future potential is another one, and people, a lot of times business owners will think, but my business has so much potential. If you just added another salesperson, if you just did more marketing, and the sad part is that a buyer doesn't always want to buy what it could do. They want to buy what a seller did. In fact, I'll give you a quick story. We had a family business that we looked at helping the son who had run it for 20 years, helping him to value the business and determine its worth, and his exit plan was doing about $2 million in sales. So he had a nice, strong, good-sized small business. He had worked hard. He had made a lot of sacrifices. And he called me when he was ready to sell. It was about a 40-year-old business. He had been in there about 20 years. He had a huge list of clients over the years. They were great people, but he was only doing about $120,000 of profit. And he wanted $1 million for the business. Sadly, the buyers would never value it at $1 million because the things that the seller valued, the large list, the sacrifices, the long hours, the great reputation, were not the things that buyers value. See, a seller might value hard work, but a buyer values something very different. And see, the truth is most sellers and business owners have never been educated about how businesses are valued. In fact, it's not even your fault if you're a business owner joining me today, because this has been a taboo topic for decades. We as business owners, we just don't want to talk about what businesses are worth. We never want to think that there's going to be a day that we won't own our business. But the truth is, by using this ostrich technique and sticking our head in the sand and pretending it doesn't exist only hurts us in the long run. And it is my mission to educate small business owners on their options and what they can do. I've taken on the role of being a champion for small businesses. And so today's webinar is the start of that, is to help educate you on what is it exactly that a business owner or a buyer is looking for in a business. So my story, and some of you may have heard my story, many years ago, I was in a marketing company, and I struggled for many, many years to get that company off the ground, put 7 years into it. By the end of my 7th year, I was generating over $16 million a year in sales. This picture you see here was when they were promoting myself and my partner to the top of the company in the Netherlands. I grinded it out year after year, and finally I got there. I had everything that everyone thought was the keys to success. I had a beautiful home. I was making a ton of money. We had vacations. I had 10,000 distributors in the business. literally, it was an amazing business until one day when I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, literally, I couldn't get out of bed. I laid in my bed crying because I had everything everyone wanted, and I described it as a golden cage. And what shook me out of that was to realize that I had the keys to getting out of that cage. And so as I pondered what to do, I realized I not only disliked the business, I got to the point where I hated it and was making me physically sick. Long conversations with my partner, and finally we agreed that I would come back to the United States and he would take over the company. Well, we had to figure out what the company was worth, and he showed me the balance sheet, and the balance sheet clearly said the net worth of the business was negative $33,000. I didn't know any better. I'd never known how to value a company. We never talked about how to exit a business. And so that day, a company generating more than $500,000 of profit a year, there's $16 million on the top line, I gave it to my partner for nothing. I came back to the United States and many years later learned what businesses are valued for and how they're valued. And that mistake, by not knowing what my business was worth, that mistake today, I believe, cost me between $2 and $3 million. So I'm here to share with you this story, not to make you feel sorry for me, certainly not, but I'm here to share that with you so that you don't make the same mistake. I have time to make it up, but sadly, many of the other business owners that I work with will not have the time. I've got the years. So I want to share with you today, as a business broker, what it's going to take to get your business to worth millions, helping you understand how businesses are valued and helping you certainly not to make the same mistakes that I have made. So how does a buyer value a business? First and foremost, most buyers are going to value your business based on your profit. It's going to be based on how much does your business actually make. What does the new owner get to keep from all of this work that the business is doing? It's also going to be consideration of the assets. Some businesses are valued based on the type of assets they have, whether that's machinery, equipment, inventory, it's hard assets. Many buyers look at the level of risk. I recently had a business that was under contract, and we were 3 days before closing, and sadly the buyer backed out because the seller's business was being sued. Now everyone knew it was being sued up front, but the level of risk to buy that business made it too difficult for this buyer, and they backed out. The business became unsellable, and the seller is still trying to work out the lawsuit. Stability is another one. Some people think a fast-growing company is awesome and every buyer will want me because I'm fast-growing. Problem is, anything that is changing rapidly, whether it's up or down, creates instability. Instability will often have a buyer discounting your business because they're afraid. They don't know why it jumped. They don't know what the controls are of this, and they're afraid that as quick as it jumps up, it can jump down. So a fast-growing company can also be a red flag for certain buyers. They also want to know what was done. Buyers often want to pay sellers of businesses for what they did, not what the buyer's going to do. Now, we're going to talk in a minute of different types of buyers, and I'll profile the two different types. But what's important for you to know is that as a business owner, you're going to get paid for what you did, not what a buyer can do in many cases. Alignment of values is another one. If you end up in a merger situation, oftentimes this is in the technology realm. When a startup will happen, especially this has been very common on the West Coast, a startup will happen, they'll actually identify who their buyer is and build their business to be in alignment of values of that buyer. Now that's very risky because if that buyer doesn't buy you, you might not have another buyer. So it's very important to consider that when you align that way. But we'll talk a little bit about alignment of values and how a misalignment of values could actually discount the value of your business and discount your best buyer. And of course, opportunity. If we're talking a larger company, so if you're talking over $1 million of EBITDA or earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, many larger acquisition companies, so more of a merger and acquisition type businesses, the buyer will be looking for opportunity. Can they grow your business quickly? Can they put more infrastructure in place and leapfrog the business? Is your business a complement to what they currently do? And so these are all things that a certain type of buyer will look at. So let's look at the different types of buyers and understand what they're looking for so that you understand better how they value your business. So the first most common type of buyer, and there's two of them, is a strategic buyer or a financial buyer. So let's break down the strategic buyer first. A strategic buyer is often a private equity firm, a mergers or acquisition type company. These are often for larger deals. These are usually over $1 million of EBITDA. And if you're not familiar with EBITDA, EBITDA is your earnings, so your net profit, and then you add back your taxes, your depreciation, your interest, and your amortization. So it gives you a net profit number. Now, you don't add back owner salary with EBITDA. That's only for what we call SDE, or net profit. That's for the financial buyers. So with this, you're looking at the bigger company. So $1 million EBITDA, usually you're $5 million revenue or higher. What these buyers are looking for is alignment of values, alignment of culture. They're looking for opportunities, they're looking for profit, and oh boy, are they looking for stability. They want to see a stable, growth-oriented company. They want to see something that will align with what they're doing, a strategic partner potentially. But here's the thing, they will pay you a little bit more, but they don't pay crazy money. And what I mean by that is they know what things are worth. And typically businesses in this range, when they get over $1 million EBITDA, is going to be a 4 to 6 multiple of EBITDA. Now, if the business goes over 5 million EBITDA, then you're going to be talking typically a 7 to 10 multiple. If it's in the technology arena, the multiples are widely varied from anywhere from 4 to 12, and we've even seen hundreds of times, depending on the alignment and what the business has that the buyer wants. Again, those are outside the norm. I'm going to keep us within the norm so you kind of understand the general lay of the land. Financing for these buyers is usually cash. Sometimes they'll ask for seller notes, significant size seller notes, partial buyouts where they'll buy out 20, 50, 60% of the business, have the seller stay on board and continue to run the company as they grow it, or bank lending is another option. So that's the strategic buyer. Most of the businesses that we work with in my world are not under strategic buyers. They are financial buyers, and that's with a group that's typically $750,000 in net profit and less. So under $1 million EBITDA is typically where this group is going to be looking. They are individuals. Oftentimes they are high net worth individuals who've been in the corporate arena, maybe have gotten laid off, previous business owners from another part of the country who are relocating here, someone who sold their business years ago and is looking to get another business, or it's a merger. For example, I do insurance companies. I'm a specialist in selling insurance agencies. And so it's very common that I might have a $300,000 small little insurance agency, but it'll get sold to a much larger insurance agency. So that's a merger, but still they're looking at finances. So it's not necessarily a strategic, it's more of a financial buyer, because the finances is really what they're looking at. These buyers expect that the buyer will be the owner operator. So they're not looking for the owner to stay on. They're going to do a full buyout. The owner's going to have anywhere from a 2 to 4 week period of training, and they're going to transition out fairly quickly. Usually, again, this is about $750,000 in net profit or less. Financing here is typically cash. Seller notes are very common. SBA lending is very common. Bank lending. 401k rollovers, that's where someone takes their funds in a retirement account and rolls it over to buy the business. And of course, friends and family is another area that buyers will use in purchasing. But as you can see, these two buyers are very, very different. In my world, in the world we're going to talk today, I'm going to really talk more towards financial buyers, because that's the world where most of the small businesses under $1 million EBITDA are going to get sold. So the truth is, these buyers buy what you did, not what you dreamed. So it's great that you've dreamed up all these other things that you can do and all these other ways, but a buyer's always going to say, if it's so great and it would have changed your company radically, why didn't you do it? And the answer always comes back from the seller, well, I didn't have time, I didn't have money, I didn't have. So the buyer often thinks, what makes you think I do? So you got to remember, buyers buy what you did, not what you dreamed. So thinking about this, which company would you pay more? Let's put you in the buyer's shoes for just a minute. Company A that has $2 million of sales and $120,000 of profit, or company B that has $2 million of sales and $400,000 of profit? Well, for most of my buyers, the answer is pretty easy. You would buy the $400,000 in profit, because that business converts cash quicker. It has a higher net profit, which means you have to do less sales. So many times, these types of companies, when you have to make a decision of, do you grow the top line or do you grow the bottom line? I will tell you, in many cases, growing the bottom line is a much better financial decision than growing the top line, because it is easier to sell a company that has a higher profit margin than one that has a lower profit margin. Now, sometimes you don't have that choice. Sometimes, look, your margins are your margins. You got a 5% margin, you got a 5% margin. But if you can go to the 10% versus the 5%, you convert more cash to profit. Oftentimes it's an easier business to run, but it may not be as opportunistic. So you have to sometimes make those choices. So in the end, it doesn't matter what you make, it matters what you keep. And you want to remember that as a business owner. Oftentimes, we just had a company that was $20 million in revenue and was only making $450,000, and the seller wanted $2-3 million. He thought for sure out of $20 million, he should be able to get a $2-3 million price, but on $450,000 in net profit, he's probably barely under $1 million of price. So we want to help you to understand how buyers look at your business and how they're going to value your business long term. And what happens is if you can integrate this into your thinking and your decision process very early on into when you start your business, when you're growing your business, as you're running your business, these decisions become part of what you do on a day-to-day basis. So a couple tips for increasing value. One is show the profit on your books. It's very common that I talk to business owners and they tell me about where they put things in their books, where they put their groceries, where they put their boats, their rental homes, their vacations, their spouse's car, their kids that are working in the business. And the sad part is they don't realize that many times a bank does not want to hear all the tax evasion techniques that you've used because that's not legal. So you can't even really tell the bank about all of that to be able to get financing. And if you can't get financing, your buyer's going to have a whole lot more cash, or you're going to end up having to hold a larger percentage of that as a seller note. So since many of my sellers do not want to be a bank, I'm going to give you the best tip I can give you all day, is that you only get to benefit once. You can either save it from paying the IRS at 38 cents per dollar, or you can get it from the buyer at a range of about 1 to 6 times what you saved. So my suggestion is start today and clean up your books. 2017 taxes are not done. You've got a chance to get this year's taxes, your first year of clean books. Now, why is that important? Because you don't know when you're going to need to sell. I had a seller recently come to me. He had a medical issue come up. It was cancer. And sadly, he didn't know 3 years ago he was going to get cancer today. He had no way to know 3 years ago that he was going to have to sell his business now and try to get as much as he could because he had never prepared for it. So since we don't know oftentimes as business owners when we're going to sell, it's important that you go ahead and start your planning scheduling now. So secret number 2 is that selling a business for millions is you need to leverage time. See, time is going to pass whether you do anything or not. Whether it's a year, 2 years, 5 years, it's going to happen. Of course, that we're all here, it will happen. Savvy business owners leverage time to build value in their business while time is passing. So while time is passing, these little adjustments are going to add up to a huge value over time and will allow you to get further ahead faster. Because remember, we don't often know when we're going to exit. I didn't know 3 years before I left my business that I was going to leave it. So let me talk about the dirty dozen. These are the items that devalue your businesses. I'm going to go through them relatively quickly, and what I'll do afterwards is I'm going to send you a checklist for everybody that's registered, a checklist on all of these items and very specifics of how to adjust these dials and make good decisions. So I'll email that to you with a copy of this after the webinar, and you'll be able to get a little bit more detail from that. Now, the first one is declines raise red flags. So whether it's declining profits, low margins, or declining revenue, these are all part of things that raise red flags for buyers. I mean, think about it. If you didn't know anything about a business and you're looking at someone's business and they have declining profits from last year, their revenues are going down, what buyers often think is this business is in a death spiral. Now, it could have been you had a hurricane that came through and shut you down for a week. It could have been you shut down to remodel. These are all understandable things, but on paper, the buyer is not going to see that, and it will immediately raise a red flag and make it harder for your business to sell. So keep that in mind as you continue to build out your company. As you're seeing, if you're looking like declining profits, you're going to want to get in there and take a look at that immediately. And we'll talk about a tip here in a minute that you want to document it, and we'll talk about how to document that in a minute. So the next couple are too much risk. This includes lawsuits. This includes no standard operating procedures. We had a guy that made a $500,000 mistake that made his business unsellable was the lawsuit. He didn't realize that that lawsuit was going to make his business be unsellable, and it was because he didn't have a standard operating procedure in place that the lawsuit occurred. So it's important that you have standardizations in place so that you can hold your employees accountable to it, that when mistakes occur, that you know how to correct them and move forward. Another one we commonly see is too high of a customer concentration. I have a business right now that has 80% of her clients with one, or 80% of her revenue is with one client. And the risk here is that a buyer thinks, what if that one client leaves? Or what if that one client is best friends with the owner, and the owner leaves and the friend leaves and there goes the business? So even though in your head you may know the truth, you may know that you have no relationship and it's only because of your great company that your business thrives, but the buyer doesn't, and you will automatically have a buyer discounting your value because they don't know. You got to remember, you know your business. You've lived it, you've breathed it. In many cases, you were the founder, you were the one who conceived this business. You know it intimately, but a buyer will not. They have no way to have 4, 5, 6, 10 years of knowledge of your company. They're going to get 30, 60, 90 days to get to know your business. And anything that throws up red flags are going to create concerns. So you want to try to remove these as much as possible. Another one is landlords, and there's 2 areas here. One is the leases. You got to make sure your lease has at least another set of options, at least one more series. So if you have a 5-year lease, I'd like to see at least one option of 5 years. Ideal is 2 options of 5 years. This helps you to be able to transition. I will tell you, we had a business that was in a mall, and the buyer wanted to make sure it was going to be there for more than 2 years because the lease was only for 2 years. The landlord would not give that seller, that seller or that buyer a lease for longer than 2 years. Couldn't sell the business, ended up shutting it down. So it's important that when you work with your landlord, you ask for those options, because it's very difficult that if you don't have it, sometimes the landlords will not give it to the buyers and your business may become unsellable. Another thing that happens is landlords will not approve the buyer. So you got to know what the buyer is and what the profile is of the buyer. And sometimes landlords want to raise the rent or make things unrealistic. Make sure when you get your lease, you check and see what it says about assignment of that lease. Sometimes it will say assignment fee. Try to get that described. Sometimes the fee is $500. Sometimes the fee is $5,000. And that's a big difference on the assignment fee with landlords. So it's something you want to look at ahead of time, long before you ever think about selling. You want to make sure your lease is in place. The next one's unclean books, and we kind of talked about that, is too many personal expenses or even inconsistent bookkeeping. If you're changing accounting firms every year or every couple years, your books aren't going to be consistent. It's going to make it very, very difficult for a buyer to get a pulse of what your business is doing year over year because the books aren't consistent. Also, poor inventory controls or low turns. If you're a business that has turns, you have inventory you're rotating, you want to check your turns. If you're only getting 1 or 2 turns and the industry average is 3 or 4, you need to check and see why you're only getting 1 or 2. Do you have too much inventory? Are you buying the wrong inventory? Are you pricing it incorrectly? You need to take a look at that. The other thing is you want to make sure that you're not getting stolen from, quite honestly. We did some research. We do a 75-point inspection on every one of our businesses. And one of them, we were able to find $75,000 of stolen alcohol profit by analyzing the P&L. Make sure you're working with your accountants to know what your business is actually doing. My seller had no idea that someone was stealing from them until we ran the numbers. So take some time to analyze your business. Check how you're doing against your benchmarks. Check how you're doing against others in your industry. Check and see where you're at so that you've got an idea. Is your business above the industry standard, below the standard? Where are you at? Another 2 of the dirty dozen is codependence. This is huge. Too much business reliance on the owner. And oftentimes what will happen is the owner is the chef, the owner is the prep, the owner is the salesperson, the owner is the on-site manager, the owner is. And by the time, but the owner didn't start that way. He started as one small role and then took on. But the problem is once the owner's got so many roles, nobody is going to be as experienced to step into all those roles, and buyers walk away because there's too much they have to do. They can't do it all like this one person who's been doing it for 20 years can. So it's important that you build your business that it's not reliant on you as the owner. The other one is key employees. If you have key employees, you want to make sure that you're securing them in a way that they're going to stay with the business, is that they're not stuck to you. So this falls under the category of sister, brother, aunt, uncle, nephew, niece, uncle, mother, them working in the business. If they are your key employees, you've got to have a transition plan to get them out sooner than later when you're getting ready to sell. Because if you leave and 5 of your family members leave with it, there's nothing left for the business. So it's important that you have key employees secured to stay with the business during the transition. I have a tutoring business that recently went under contract because there's a director in place. The buyers were excited that they would have somebody there that knew the business besides the owner. And I've had several businesses that I can't get buyers on because there's nobody that's going to stay, and the buyers are very nervous about how dependent it is on the owner. So a couple other little items you want to know about is that could hurt deals is aging on your accounts receivable. Make sure that you have that under control. If your accounts receivable are going 90, 120 days or longer, you need to get that under control long before you try to sell the business. Oftentimes accounts receivable are sold in addition to the price of the business, and buyers are going to discount that. If your receivables are 90, 120 days, they're going to say they're uncollectible, and consequently they're not going to want to purchase your receivables as well, and you're going to be stuck with them having to try to collect after you've sold the business. Again, less than 3 years of consistent profitable tax returns. Tax returns should show a profit. If your tax returns are not showing a profit, you really need to reevaluate that. If we look at visa buyers, which are in essence a type of financial buyer, if they're buying your business in order to have a visa to live in this country, they're going to want to see what we call profitable tax returns. That means they have to show, typically, my understanding is 50, 60, 70,000 of profit on the tax return. So if you want that type of buyer, you need to make sure that your tax returns are showing those kind of numbers. So here's a tip. Document one-time events. That's hurricanes, shutdowns, remodelings, lawsuits, if you win or lose the lawsuit, and any fees associated with those lawsuits. Create one document where you keep this information, and when you create one document where you keep this information, you're going to be able to better explain what happened in 2016 when your revenues were down or your profits were down. You'll be able to explain why you were shut down for a week in 2017 during Hurricane Irma. But 3 years from now, you're going to forget that information, or even 2 years from now, you might forget. So it's important that you document that information. Secret number 3 is planning matters. And the quote here is, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So if you really do want your business to sell for millions, you're going to have to plan for it. And I would share with you that you need to start with the end of the mind. So what would you love your business to be worth? Is it $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $50 million, $100 million, $1 billion? As much as you can think, you can implement. So here's what we start. Start with the 10-year goal. Think about 10 years out, what do you want your business to be worth? Let's say it's $10 million. Great. What does a $10 million company look like? Now start building that out on paper. What does it look like? What systems do they have? What structure do they have? What management do they have? What do they have to have in place? Now back that out to 5 years. What's the 5-year goal? Maybe it's $5 million. Okay, what does that business look like? Then back it out to a 3-year goal. What does that business look like? And a 2-year goal, and then this year. And now you've put yourself on a trajectory. That's that 1 degree of difference. That time that now you can leverage your time. Now you can start looking 10 years out and going, if I need to look like that, I need to take on these clients. I need to build this infrastructure. I need to have this in place, because once I get there, I won't have time to build it. I got to build it as I get there. So quick story. There was many of you know the Suddath company is here in Jacksonville, and of course 1919, Carl Suddath founded this moving company with a cart and 2 mules, quite frankly. But it was interesting. There was another company, no one remembers the name, but it was right down the block, and the grandfather of one of my friends started that company. Nobody remembers them. They didn't last more than a couple of years, but the reason why Suddath today has become, they've hit their 50th anniversary. They are one of the largest moving and transport companies literally on the globe. An amazing organization is because they had a plan. They took the time to think past today. Many times business owners will start today and they will repeat 1 year 20 times. So they don't get 20 years of growth because they never planned for 20 years of growth. So I want to encourage you today, if you're hearing this message, sit down and plan for your growth. Who cares if you miss the numbers radically? I promise, just by taking that time to plan for your growth and plan for your next steps, you will be significantly larger than the person who does nothing and keeps repeating that 1 year of experience over and over and over again. So if it matters and it's important, why don't most business owners do it? And the truth is they don't do it because we truly don't know. We haven't been told. And we don't think it'll ever happen to us. Because see, the reality is there's 7 reasons why business owners leave a business, and most of us never plan for any of these. Burnout by far is number 1. New opportunities. We never think our shiny business will become dull and something else will excite us. Revenues start to decline. Negative industry trends, partnership disputes, financial reasons, or lifestyle changes are very, very common. Some other reasons why we don't plan is because this is a specialized field, and many times people don't even know where to start when it comes to planning their exit. Not a lot of people do this kind of work. In fact, here in Jacksonville, I only know one other option for exit planning besides the products that I'm offering, and I'll share that with you here in just a moment. It's a bit of a weird language, so it can get confusing, and many of the financial planners won't work with businesses unless they're over $1 million EBITDA, and it gets expensive. So we've put together some programs here to try to help you, to try to get this message out. I'm a champion of small business. I love small business here in Jacksonville. It is what I believe I was put here to do, is to help and coordinate these small business owners, help you guys thrive and survive, have success. And so I just recently met with the wife of a business owner, let me say widow of a former business owner. He went on vacation 4 years ago to the place he always went, dove into the pond he always dived into, hit his head, fractured his skull, and died in 2 days. His entire business, along with his home and everything he had, was lost. He couldn't sell the business. They had no plan. They tried to run it but didn't know what he was doing. He had no systems in place. He had trained no managers, and everything overnight was instantly and radically changed for this lady. And I had the chance of meeting her yesterday at another closing, and my heart goes out to her because she had no way to know. And many of us, we have no way to know. So I want to encourage you, whether you take my option or someone else's option, if you're on this webinar today, make it one of your goals by the end of 2017 that you will start implementing an exit plan. Whether it's formal or informal, at least start the process. Don't let yourself get caught without the plan. So let me share with you 2 offerings that I do know about. The Small Business Development Center is going to be starting an exit planning program through the SBDC over at UNF here in Jacksonville. That is going to be launched very soon. They are offering that complimentary, and they'll be going through their advisors there, and really they guide you through the process. So they'll tell you what to do. You need to go do it. It's a great program. I've been asked to do several of their training videos. I'll be recording those in the next couple of weeks, and they'll take all sizes of business. It's really a strong, it looks like it's going to be a good program, and again, it's something that's readily available. Here at Murphy, we have our own version. It's a little different. It's a done-for-you program, so that means you bring us the information, we sit down and do it, we provide the analysis, and we go through all of that for you. That program includes, you'll see to the right, an estimated business value and sales price, risk mitigation assessment. We have an economic sales report, so you understand the buy-sell cycles of selling a business, so you can target when exactly you would want to sell. Tax mitigation analysis, a customized business value enhancement report, as well as the ideal buyer review and exit plan options. There's about 7 ways to exit a business, so we'll talk about those with you. Additionally, we'll introduce you to trusted advisors, provide you with yearly reviews, and also contain all the documents so that, heaven forbid, something did happen, we'd have everything ready to go, and we could get that business listed in a very short period of time and give you the best chance if you had to exit quickly. And for some, that certainly that could be an option. Being that you're on this webinar, I'm glad to offer everyone a complimentary 30-minute business review. That would be a 30-minute phone call. I would send you an intake survey ahead of time to understand a little bit about your business. During that call, we would do a high-level review of the business, point out some red flags and some tips on how to improve the value, and I'm more than happy to do that complimentary. That is my give back to the community. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to be able to get the exit plan in place. And even if you're a brand new business, I'm more than happy to do that for you. So at this time, we're going to go ahead. And so at this time, we're going to go ahead and wrap up with questions and answer any questions that might be available. So if you would like to go ahead and ask any questions, feel free at this time. Okay, it looks like So I've got a question here. It says, retiring 2 years, nationwide strategic network, company 13 years plus 2 children that want to take it over. That is a great question. What do you do? And that would be type of question that we would be glad to answer on a private call. Certainly there's lots of options. We specialize here at Murphy at third-party sales, so we go out and find buyers. Once we have a business, we properly package it, we understand the business, we do a 75-point overview on the business, and truly get the in-depth analysis. Then we go and we hunt for buyers. That's my specialty. With a background in running an international marketing company, I'm very good at identifying what we have and finding out who would buy it. So I'll be more than happy to talk with you on that one after offline. Does anybody else have any other questions at this point? Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us this afternoon. Thank you for the time, and I will be sending this message. I will be sending this out shortly after the call. Again, have a great day. If I can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I wish everyone all the best. Have a great afternoon, everyone.